Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which our OP quietly sabotages a corporate takedown, not through chaos, but through compliance. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. They fired my boss, tried to push me out, then wondered why everything fell apart. I worked in an accounting department at a small business. My boss, Gary, was great and gave us lots of autonomy to get everything done. It was a small business, and over the years, as is common in small businesses, I picked up a number of duties that weren't strictly in my job description, but were pretty important. We also had a number of processes that were not well documented, but we were understaffed and not able to make any real changes. Things overall were pretty good, though, and our work flowed well and everyone was happy. Not everyone, though. Gary's boss, Carl, recently had taken over as president of the company and wanted to slash costs. Gary was one of the highest paid employees, and Carl tried to get him to take a pay cut or a cut in hours. When Gary refused, Carl fired him and shortly replaced him with Matt, who was much less experienced and much less qualified. Around this time, I used my leverage with Carl to get a solid raise. I knew Carl would be looking to replace me soon like he did Gary, but I was too essential to lose without Gary there either. I figured I had about 6 months, which lined up with about when I was planning to move out of state anyway. So knowing that when I did leave, my coworkers would be stuck picking up the slack of my job, particularly all the ancillary stuff I had picked up that wasn't documented at all, I started writing a detailed manual for my own job when I had time here and there. I didn't really care for Matt or Carl, but I figured it would save my coworkers a lot of stress. Matt was a poor accountant and a worse manager. He was an awful micromanager with no concept of the bigger picture. Pretty quickly, he noticed that I was spending time doing all these other duties not in my JD. He told me I was only to work on projects he assigned me directly. I tried to point out all the things that would not get done if I didn't do that. He was having none of it and told me not to worry about it as it wasn't my job. Sure thing, boss. I stopped doing anything except what he told me to do, and the department started falling apart. Customer emails went unanswered, software stopped working with no one to support it, files weren't organized, etc. I normally took care of these and 100 other things, but Matt was pretty clear I'm not to do any of it. I also stopped working on my manual. After a few months of this, but sooner than I expected, I was laid off by Carl and Matt for budgetary reasons. Of course, they listed my job on Indeed that same day for a laughably low salary. I was given no warning, just sat down for a meeting with the two and walked out the door. Matt didn't allow me to take anything from my desk, access to my computer, or say my goodbyes to my coworkers. He was also very clear I was not to retain any company documents or information. Sure thing, boss. So I left, and I heard from coworkers still there that over the next few weeks, things took an even worse nosedive. They weren't able to fill my job, and nobody could cover most of my actual job duties or any of my ancillary duties. By this point, vendors weren't being paid, and payroll wasn't going out on time. And then I got the call. Matt found the file I'd left in a conspicuous spot on the network drive, blank job manual and processes.zip. It was encrypted. What's in it? Oh, just a draft of all my job duties and everything I was responsible for that I worked on during downtime. Why was it even encrypted? Well, it had a bunch of confidential data and passwords in it, boss. What's the password? Sorry, boss, I don't know. I didn't retain it after leaving, but it's in my files. In reality, since it wasn't finished, the manual wasn't going to be some panacea for all the company's problems, but I had padded it with a lot of images, so I imagined the file size was pretty attractive. And the password was indeed in my files. If Matt cared to look, he'd find an unlabeled sticky note with a nondescript string of letters and numbers in a random folder in one of my 24 filing cabinets. As an epilogue, about 3 months after I talked to Matt, Carl fired him after discovering what a disaster the department had become. My coworkers both left around the same time for better opportunities. Carl's still been unable to fill any of those jobs after almost 18 months, so the entire accounting department staffed by contractors and consultants, who I'm sure are costing the company a fortune. I hear the board's looking for a change in company presidents. Good job. I really dislike managers who have no clue what their employees do, much less are able to do their jobs. This is an example of what happens when companies lay off experienced people who, due to tenure, make a higher salary. And our second story. You missed your Target, ma'am. This happened a few years back when a brand new Target opened in my city. I figured I'd stop by on my way home from work and grab a few essentials, Band-Aids, a new water bottle, some snacks for the car, the usual odds and ends. Now, I should mention that at the time, I worked in a very professional office environment. I'm talking full suits, tailored dresses, jackets, polished shoes, corporate to the core. That day, I was wearing a fitted black blazer, matching slacks, and a flowing emerald green blouse. I had 3-inch heels on and was carrying a structured handbag. Safe to say, I was clearly dressed for an office, not a retail shift. I was in the first aid aisle scanning the options for Band-Aids when I noticed someone standing a little too close. A woman holding a shirt in her hand was staring directly at me. I hadn't noticed her approach, so I had no clue what she wanted. Before I could say anything, she launched into a rant. Her, "Oh, so you're just going to ignore a paying customer?" Me, genuinely confused. "Are you talking to me?" Her, "Yes. Who do you think I'm talking to?" So rude. Me, "You know I don't work here, right?" Her, smirking, "Oh, you're not fooling anyone, missy. I know you work here. I've seen you in here working plenty of times. You're going to be in so much trouble when I find your manager." Me, "I really don't. Never have. I'm just trying to do my shopping." I gestured to my shopping basket, which already had a few items inside. I took a second to glance at myself just to be sure. Yep, still black and emerald green, definitely not Target red and khaki. But she wasn't hearing it. She stormed off, huffing and puffing, still convinced I was pulling some kind of elaborate customer service deception. About 5 minutes later, she came barreling back down the aisle with a man in tow wearing a red polo and a name tag, clearly a Target employee, and judging by the look on his face, not thrilled. Her, pointing at me, "There, that's her. I want her fired immediately. She was so rude to me." The man looked me up and down, blinked a couple times, and then turned to her. Target employee, "Ma'am, I'm the store manager. I've been here since this location opened, and I've personally hired everyone who works here. I can assure you this woman is not, and has never been, an employee here. She's a customer." You could almost hear the record scratch in her brain. Her face turned a whole new shade of red. Her yelling, "You're just protecting her because she's pretty. I asked for help and she just ignored me. What kind of service is that?" He tried to calmly explain that as a fellow customer, I wasn't obligated to assist her and that if she needed help, she should have looked for someone with a name tag. You know, like the one he was clearly wearing? She didn't want to hear it. She kept yelling over him, at me, at the entire aisle, going on about entitled young people and customer service standards. Meanwhile, I picked up my Band-Aids and headed for the checkout, not bothering to stick around for the dramatic finale. I passed a couple of employees near the register who gave me sympathetic looks. One even whispered, "Don't worry, she's been doing this all week." So yeah, I got mistaken for an employee because I was wearing business attire in public, I guess? And this woman fully committed to her delusion, even when faced with obvious facts. Still, I'll never forget the manager's face when he had to explain to her, in the most professional tone possible, that yelling at random shoppers was not a good look. Some people really do need everything explained, including the difference between a blouse and a uniform. And our last story. HOA wanted to remove my trampoline? What about the radio tower? Fighting an HOA can feel like battling a boss in a video game, one that cheats, moves the goalposts, and wields citations like they're spells. But sometimes all it takes is a little creative thinking to put them in their place. A couple of years ago, I installed a trampoline in my backyard for my kids. It wasn't an eyesore, it had a safety net, and it was nestled neatly in a corner, not towering over fences or anything ridiculous. My kids loved it. Their friends loved it. I was basking in cool dad status. That lasted all of 1 week. Then came the HOA letter. Section 7.3 of the Architectural Guidelines states that all recreational equipment must not be visible from neighboring lots or exceed 6 feet in height within 10 feet of any property line. Yada yada. Basically, remove it or else. Now, I could have followed the typical path, filed an appeal, shown up at some soul-sucking board meeting, maybe even lawyered up. But I'd already gone down that road once before over a garden trellis of all things. I wasn't about to let the HOA power walk all over me again. This time, I had a plan. I wrote them a letter, one that started off perfectly cordial and compliant. Dear Board, thank you for the notice regarding the trampoline. I appreciate the HOA's diligence in maintaining community standards, and out of respect for the guidelines, I will be removing the trampoline this weekend. Cue the plot twist. That said, this removal opens up a sizable portion of my backyard that I've long considered repurposing. After giving it some thought, I've decided to proceed with erecting a 40-foot ham radio antenna tower. This installation will serve as a relay for local emergency communications and is protected under federal regulations. I went on to reference the Ham Radio Parity Act and the Local Community Radio Act. These are very real laws that limit how much local governments, and by extension, HOAs, can restrict licensed amateur radio operators. I made sure to include legal citations and mention that under FCC protections, any interference could result in federal fines. I closed the letter with, if the HOA has any objections or concerns, please direct them to the FCC's Amateur Radio Legal Advisory Board. I will be submitting my preliminary plans and application later this week. Then I waited. Radio silence for 2 whole weeks. No phone calls, no emails, no nosy HOA busybodies cruising by in golf carts. I knew they were huddling in a panic somewhere trying to figure out what the hell to do. HOAs hate 2 things more than anything, being wrong and not being in control. Sure enough, just over 2 weeks later, I got a second letter. This one was practically wrapped in a bow. Dear OP, upon review, the HOA board has decided to approve a grandfathered exemption for the trampoline currently located in your backyard. We appreciate your cooperation and look forward to continued mutual understanding. Translation: please don't build the tower. Enjoy your trampoline. We'll look the other way. I laughed for a solid 10 minutes. Here's the kicker. I didn't even bluff. I'd already found a secondhand steel tower on Craigslist, and there's a surprisingly robust community of ham radio enthusiasts who'd help install one for a pizza and a 6-pack. Had the HOA called my hand, I would have happily turned my backyard into a communications hub. Instead, they caved. The trampoline stayed, the kids kept bouncing, and I made sure every neighbor heard the story, especially the ones who'd been fined for decorative flags or overgrown shrubs. Turns out the HOA can dish it out, but they definitely can't take it. So yeah, if you ever find yourself at war with an HOA, remember this: nothing scares a bunch of clipboard warriors more than federal radio law. The aftermath is the best part. Your kids still get the trampoline, but now you've got a nuclear option in your back pocket forever. Any future HOA nonsense, just casually mention you've been brushing up on your Morse code. They'll leave you alone out of sheer terror. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.